Alrighty, friendos, it is Monday. That means it's time for a Q&A. So for those of you just joining us, all you have to do is leave your Halo-related or unrelated questions down below, and hopefully they'll be answered on next week's show. So let's kick this week off with a question from Fatal Cross, who says, Q&A, why do you think that the Brute art style design changes hadn't had much controversy as far as the Elite art design changes? Their design changed drastically from Halo 2 to 3 to Reach, but I haven't seen much discussion as to why. Thanks. So the reason that there isn't much controversy about the Brutes seemingly looking completely different every single game that they're in is primarily because of that. They've never had a solid look that they've stuck with. The most consistent look, I think, was the Halo 3 Brutes, since those existed for about 2 games. You had Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST. And ODST cheats a little bit because it was just the Halo 3 engine and all those assets. That's primarily the reason why. The Elites kind of remained the same. From Combat Evolved to Halo 2, they primarily had the same silhouette. And then in Halo 3, they got a little bit chubby, they put on some weight, they got a little bit shorter looking, probably to make them fit a little bit more into a Spartan's hitbox because they were now a proper part of players' customization online. And then in Reach, you could see that they took more of kind of like a Combat Evolved-y look while retaining kind of the chubby bulkiness of Halo 3. And then in Halo 4, you had a new studio coming in, 343. They wanted to try to redesign some of the Covenant to make them less personal, because a lot of the Bungie games, we got to know the Covenant. They were very familiar creatures to us. And so in Halo 4, the goal was to make them a little bit more alien and monstrous again. And I don't think it worked out quite so well. And then in Halo 5, things got especially awkward because they walked back on that make the Covenant alien again design philosophy, but they still were stuck with those monster models. So you had this like gross bulldog elite, like this just gross elephant thing, but it's talking English and you can understand it and they're in cutscenes and it's just like, oh, this doesn't look right. It doesn't feel like an elite. The Brutes never had a solid look. The Elites kinda did, and that's why I think that you see a lot less art style discussions about the Brutes than you do the Elites. That being said, at Halo Infinite, I don't think the Brutes look quite as bad as people say, but man, I wish that they had goatees like they did in Halo 3, because just the flat, shaved Brute look, it looks kind of like you're fighting a bunch of Mr. Potato Heads, or those alien things from Doctor Who that just look like mashed potatoes in a humanoid body. I hope that answered your question. The next one comes from Shiza Salad, who says, Q&A. Easily one of my favorite gun models is the assault rifle from Halo Reach. I was wondering what your favorite gun model in Halo is. Alright, so that's a really hard question because it's easier for me to list the gun models that I don't like. Because for the most part, I like Halo gun models, minus, a lot of the stuff in the Reclaimer saga. But if I were to nail it down to a specific couple of ones that I really like, the Halo 3 fuel rod gun would definitely be there, along with the Halo 3 plasma rifle. The reason that I really like the plasma rifle is because you look at it and it's like, what? That is their fully automatic weapon? It reminds me a little bit of the green men from Mars with the UFO coming down, and then they come down the ramp and they've got those little toy ray guns in their hands. It's fun when alien weapons look truly alien and unconventional, just like this wasn't built for human hands. But I guess if I had to nail it down to one specific gun, probably the Needler, because not just is it a visually interesting gun, I mean, yeah, this firearm is pink, bright pink, but also I just think it's so unique and specific to Halo. I can't think of a single gun from any other video game franchise that looks kind of like the Needler does. It's a very, very original design. So the next question comes from Irradiated Imp, who says, Q&A. So I've been watching a lot of your videos tonight after I got off of work. I saw an older Q&A where you answered a question about how you would monetize Infinite. Going off the news we've gotten about Infinite, from the showcase that Infinite is supposed to be a platform for the future of the franchise, do you think there's a chance that Infinite's monetization would be more focused on paid expansions rather than microtransactions? All right, so realistically, how I'm expecting it to be monetized is we're probably going to get a rotating in-game store and a battle pass. I'm expecting that's where most of the money for 343 is going to be coming from. My fear about that is that we're going to get a Gears of War 5 type situation. Gears of War 5 is one of the most offensive in-game monetization models in recent memory. I think the lack of respect and just contempt for the player is tangible. I mean, to the point that you load up that game and there's literally a shopping cart icon, like something from Amazon.com. It's just gross. That game is transparent in what it wants from the player, and I hate it. I think as far as like microtransactions go, one of the games in recent memory that I think actually had a great microtransaction model was Titanfall 2. The way that that game worked was you had a very, very in-depth progression system. There were just so many things to unlock, not just guns, attachments, but also cosmetic stuff, and it was all unlockable through a progression system. To the point that there was no way to actually buy your way through the progression system. You had to earn that stuff. And then, after the game launched, months down the road, they added an item shop, and all the items in there were exclusive to the item shop. So the progression system was surgically detached from the in-game store, and that's the way I prefer it. I don't want kind of like the game's design, the UI and stuff. All roads lead to that in-game store. I don't want to see little stickers for like 20% off, because it's like, no, it's digital. You don't have a limited amount of them, those limited time offers. Like, no, you're not trying to get rid of stock like an actual store. These things are digital. You have as many as you'd like there to be. They're not scarce. They're not limited time. Stop it. I know you're trying to get me to buy the thing with fake sales. So yeah, realistically, we're probably going to see something like what you see in most games, where you have a battle pass that you can buy, you can probably skip tiers and stuff like that, and then you'll probably get a rotating in-game store. I would like to hope, though, that it'll be a little bit different, because 343, thankfully, if Halo Infinite came out last year, I'd say we'd probably get a monetization model closer to Gears 5, but 343 has benefited from having their game be in development during the awkward growing pains of the industry trying to separate itself from loot box controversies, and so you had a lot of things like Fallout 76, Gears of War 5, where they come out and they're just lambasted for how aggressive their monetization models are. Things like Destiny 2 are finally starting to settle into a rhythm that players feel a bit more comfortable with. I mean, there's obviously still work that needs to be done, but 343 has some examples right now that they can take a look at and kind of learn from, and so that makes me feel a little bit more optimistic about the monetization model. So the next question comes from AXELNZ, who says, Q&A, given the lack of polish on what we saw, 343's indirect and roundabout response to criticisms of the aforementioned, the cancellation of flighting due to COVID, and the fact that they're adding ray tracing after launch as part of their 10-year live service report, do you think that we're in for another Halo 5-like launch? So, let's talk about some of the red flags first that kind of give me like, oh no, I've been here before with Halo 5. The shotgun and the Magnum are being replaced by new weapons, the Sidekick pistol and the Bulldog shotgun. And we've been here before with the Spanker, but what's a little bit worse as far as the Bulldog goes is, so the bazooka, like tube design for the rocket launcher in Halo 5, it still mechanically was the rocket launcher. It had 2 shells before reloading, it's the Halo rocket launcher, it just looks boring. The Bulldog not just looks boring, it's also mechanically different from the traditional shotgun in a way that I think is actually more harmful than beneficial. So the way that the Bulldog shotgun works is it's a magazine. What makes the shotgun interesting is that not just that it's pump action, it's that you manually reload each shell, and that actually creates combat stories that the player lives through. Think of all those moments in Infection where you've got like 3 or 4 different zombies barreling towards you, and you've got like 1 shell in, 2 shells in. Oh no, they're getting closer. I've only loaded in 3 shells into this shotgun. Do I have enough to take them out? You're not gonna get that with the Bulldog. It's just quick reload of the magazine, boom, the shotgun's full, like every other gun in the game. Halo Infinite's shotgun looks boring, not just visually, but mechanically. I don't like the Bulldog. It's a bad replacement for the traditional shotgun. And the fact that they kind of suggested that, oh, well, the classic shotgun and the Magnum, they're not in the game at the moment. That implies that they could be added back via DLC. Well, the campaign isn't really going to benefit from that, right? I mean, this campaign will have been developed with the Bulldog as the shotgun, with the Sidekick as the Magnum. Like, whatever DLC does, it will be inorganically adding the classic shotgun and Magnum into the campaign. It's just... It's a mistake that I didn't think they'd make after Halo 5, and I'm very surprised to see that they not just replaced 1 gun, but replaced 2 guns, and also reinvented a gun in a way that makes it a little bit less interesting. It's just very strange to see that mistake repeated. And then obviously the 10-year Journey live support thing. So I don't know if maybe it's kind of like a bubble within the game industry. 10-year Journey is not exciting. I'm sure that, like, for investors and stuff, they really like hearing that. They know that, like, a game's going to be supported long-term, but to gamers, that's become a bit of a red flag. Consistently, every game that has promised a 10-year journey has been underwhelming and been kind of notorious stories of what not to do at launch for a video game. I think of Anthem, I think of Destiny 1. It's... Please stop saying 10-year journey. It doesn't excite us, it scares us. But we've gotten some of those red flags out of the way. As far as the graphics concerns go, so I don't think 343 actually addressed them in a roundabout way. I think they were actually very upfront and surprisingly honest. So Halo Infinite's campaign demo was not good. It was supposed to show the game off in a flattering light and get us excited, and obviously I am interested in what was shown off in theory. I just think the actual presentation of those ideas was very flat and weirdly lacking polish or QA. And I don't think it did the game any justice for people that were more skeptical. I think it just kind of like reaffirmed some of their fears. So 343 did address a lot of the graphical criticisms in a way that I actually did appreciate. So they separated graphical fidelity from art style. Artistically, Halo Infinite has a very specific goal. It's supposed to harken back to how Halo games used to look, but things like the poor texture filtering, the very low draw distance, those are not part of the art style. You know, they're not trying to graphically make the game look like something from 2007. Halo 2 Anniversary is a good example of like art style versus graphical fidelity. Halo 2 Anniversary looks really good. The art style, though, is the classic art style. You know, it looks a lot like Halo 2. And Halo Infinite right now, that graphical fidelity needs to be bumped up by like 30%. You know, we need to see a little bit more natural looking lighting. We need to see better texture filtering. We need to see a much larger draw distance, or at least better methods of hiding grass poppin' and how kind of low the draw distance is. Because when Chief got in the Warthog, that should have been kind of exciting, but to me, I was distracted by how visibly small the draw distance was. Like, grass was growing in front of the Warthog as it drove. It was, you know, it was bad looking. As people have pointed out, though, 343 released a kind of campaign hype teaser video thing that had noticeably more detail on some of its models than what they showed off in that campaign demo. So there is definitely fidelity increases happening internally. I'm very confused. I've never been so confused about what the game is supposed to look like before, because every time they show it off, it has like a different level of detail. I hope that the final game is pretty and that the graphical fidelity is good looking. But yeah, that's definitely an area where they need to improve. So the next question comes from Guy Bieg, who says, Q&A, out of everything we saw in the reveal, what is your favorite? Addition, weapon, ability, etc. And what did you dislike, or what gripes do you have, or what would you change gameplay-wise in the presentation? What I really like is innovations to the AI this time around. So in Halo 5, 343 was so tunnel vision focused on Spartan abilities that they completely forgot to, introduce new things for the Covenant, new toys for them to use against the player and stuff. It was all about the player, and I liked that this time around there was a lot of attention paid to the external elements of the gameplay, like the Banished. I think they look fun to fight, which is something I can't really say for the Covenant in Halo 5. I think the Brutes have really interesting behaviors. I like the drop pods that they come in on. I like the presentation of them. I like their body language and their behaviors, minus like the goofy looking Craig face. It's just, I'm more interested this time around because I was expecting kind of more Spartan ability stuff, like just focusing on the player, core gameplay, the player. So seeing actual external changes to the way that the AI interact with the sandbox, interact with the player and stuff, I'm interested this time around. I want to see what they're doing. As far as things that I saw that I didn't like, the grappling hook could have been really cool, but what worried me is it seemed to be recharging, which... Alright, so the grappling hook is an ignore the level design ability. You can use it to bypass things. We saw the Master Chief kind of like skip going up a cliff, and instead he just grappled up it. Giving the player unlimited access to an ignore the level design ability is maybe not great for level design, because Halo 5 suffered a lot by just letting the player fly over the levels. And I'm very worried that that grappling hook is going to produce something very similar. So when I play Halo Infinite, I'm going to make a conscious decision to not use it as much as possible. I wish that it was an external pickup with a limited amount of uses. I also think that that would encourage player exploration, because if you wanted to get your hands on fun tools like that, you gotta find them in the environment. It's just, I'm disappointed to see some of that Halo 5 design philosophy of just like, no, the player's gotta ignore the level design. We gotta give them those tools and unlimited amounts of them. So the next question is actually rather fitting. It comes from Majora Z, who says, late comment, but a question for the next Q&A. How do you think additions like armor abilities, loadouts, sprint, thrust, etc. would have been received if they were introduced earlier in the series like Halo 2 or 3? And the answer is, I think they would have been received very well. In the early days of the series, it had established a very specific style of gameplay, and if you began to just change that, you begin to change kind of the identity of what the series is, the gameplay experience it's known for offering. And if, say, Halo 2 had all of the Spartan abilities of Halo 5, I think you would have seen, some discussion about, well, which did you like better, Combat Evolved or Halo 2? But I think for the most part, going forward, people would have been more fine with it. The problem is that the series didn't really have those things, so it was set in stone. Got it. Halo is the game that you buy for the simple gameplay, made complex through choices in your environment, toys that you pick up in the sandbox, player exploration. So Halo 5 coming in so late and being like, no, what makes the gameplay complex is what they choose to climb over, what they choose to sprint or slide through. And don't worry, you don't need to worry about an external sandbox. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think players would have accepted it more. Same with the art style. I do think that mostly the biggest sin that some of the art style or gameplay changes commit is that they're a little bit too late as far as innovations or modifications go. Halo had already set in stone what it was, so when it decided to be something completely different, it was jarring. If Halo had gotten some of those changes in much earlier in the series' life, I think they would have been accepted a little bit more. So the final question comes from Mr. Rafflecopters with 2 Z's, who says, Q&A, I'm a big forger, have been for over a decade, and I'm wondering if you think there will finally be Forgivable AI. Personally, I think there's no excuse to not have them, especially with the processing power of the Series X. They could set up a team system so that any unit could be on any team color and attack any opposing color. There could be a set level of aggressions, normal, heroic, legendary, adjustable stats, and honestly, even movement paths could be set, linking points across the map. This could open up so many possibilities for custom games, not to mention the possible tower defense and entire fan-made campaign missions. So, I am on board with you. I want Forgivable AI, but I don't think it's a matter of a deliberate choice to not include them. I think it's a matter of resources and development priorities at the time. And then as far as like the processing power of the Series X, unfortunately, Halo Infinite is gonna have to run on the dinky old original 2013 Xbox One. I'm a little bit frustrated. It's cool that Halo Infinite is going to be playable on so many different devices, but that's also not great as far as some of the like technically ambitious things that it could accomplish. As far as Forgivable AI goes, I think that obviously the series would only benefit from them inclusion. I think it would be absolutely awesome. We did recently learn that Forge in Halo Infinite is going to have an undo button, which is really cool. That seems like such a simple thing, but so I'm a forger as well. That's pretty big, being able to undo certain things that we do, like deleting objects or placing something that we didn't like, or just, you know, messing up our map and being able to erase the mistake we just made. I'm excited to see what Forge is going to be, and if 343 does plan to commit to the game for the long term, kind of like CSGO, I do hope that we see Forgivable AI in there. I hope that they don't immediately get to work on the next game. They bring their AI, or their big, like, A-team for AI, their technical engineers, and get to work on Halo Infinite 2, Electric Boogaloo. I hope that the A-team stays with this game and that we see huge, dramatic improvements and changes at an engine level that can support things like Forgivable AI. But, yeah, that's the camp I'm sitting in. So guys, I enjoyed answering all those questions. I'm currently looking over at my window. So there's supposed to be like a tropical storm or something. And it's raining outside, but it's starting to rain a lot and I'm seeing the trees blowing. I gotta get to work editing this thing and hopefully uploading it because I'm afraid that the power is gonna go out if this continues. I love you guys. Leave your questions down below. I'll pick out 7 and hopefully answer them next week. And guys, I will see you on my next video. Okay, bye.